Have you ever sat down and wondered, where did the first 3D platformer come from? How did someone go from something like Donkey Kong, where you have just like one screen to navigate, then move into Super Mario Bros., where you have scrolling stages and a jump, to something like, say, Super Mario Bros. 64 and Tomb Raider? Now, I've done videos on the overall evolution of a platformer, going into when various different mechanics were basically introduced into the genre and how they looked when they got popular, but I don't think I ever sat down and looked at the first one or really even fully thought about the most important early ones. So if you're as curious as I am, sit back and hang out a while as we go into some of the early adventure platformers and what they did for the gaming industry as a whole. Most of us, myself included, think of a handful of games when we think of early 3D platformers. For me, a professed Nintendo fan, I think of Mario 64 with its rather impressive camera control for its time and just how fluid everything moved in that space. I mean, it sounds laughable by today's standards, but up until now, everything had basically used tank controls to move in a 3D space on consoles. Tomb Raider was another example of this. This one also kind of started out with more tank controls. By that I mean you'd have to kind of turn yourself around manually. You didn't have another analog stick to move yourself around or a camera to really actively adjust. Everything stayed behind you. Now, this actually had some lock-on mechanics to work with the gunplay in the 3D space, but what it really did, other than the lock-on and the gun controls, was allow you more vertical space and ledges to grab onto and things to climb up on. It opened up a whole new world to us in space that we could move around in, and made the genre feel that much more deep and engaging as far as platformers go. Now, the thing is these go back way further than that, all the way back to a little known game known as Alpha Waves. And when I say little known game, I actually mean it. This game only really came out on two platforms, the Atari ST and the Amiga. So yeah, this was a bit of a niche game. But when did it come out? And how did it play? Now, Alpha Waves was published by Info Games, or Data East if you're in North America, in 1990. It was one of the earliest games to combine labyrinth-like exploration with platform gameplay on a full screen with 6-axis control. This game, from what I've been able to gather from finding footage, is odd, at least at its core. It looks and feels like a puzzle platform game where you maneuver your little ship, of which there were 6 that roughly acted the same, across a series of platforms. When you land on a platform, you immediately begin to jump. Each platform would have a different potential for, or strength if you will, on how high you could bounce on that platform. The idea is to bounce high enough and apply enough force for long enough to land on the next platform, with the objective being to get to the door at the end of each room. Every level in this was a cube-like room filled with various different platforms. The game had 2 modes: arcade mode, where you raced against the clock trying to make it as far as you could, collecting any extra time you could get your hands on, and a motion mode that really had no set time limit and you could just explore each room as much as you really wanted to. The reception was overall pretty favorable, with many applauding its abstract look and gameplay, though many criticized its lack of 2-player racing mode as a detraction to the game overall. Sadly, this game, while an earlier example of what other games did very well in 3D space, really didn't get a lot of attention, because it was so niche in its platform that many people really didn't know enough about it to use it as much of a reference design-wise. Credit still goes to many games like Mario 64, Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, and others for really forming what we often see as the bones of the 3D genre to this day. You can see their influence throughout. I mean, you still see it with things like lock-on mechanics, climbing mechanics, camera perspectives, and many other things that games have learned from these early pioneers into the space. However, what do you guys think of this one in particular? Do you think it's different enough from other 3D entries I've done to deserve a spot? Did any of you ever play this one at all? If so, what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments, and if you don't mind, please leave this video a like while you're there. Also, consider subscribing as well, that helps me out a ton. However, thank you once again for getting this far in the video and spending part of your day with me. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and until we meet again, happy gaming!